Call the meeting to order. Donna will call roll, please. I think.
Paul
Donna-
Aziz. Paul Aziz,
Oh, here.
Wayne Dykstra,
Here.
Gamal Nassar,
Here.
Wayne Reeskamp,
That's you, Wayne.
I'm here.
Michelle Steinhebel,
Here.
Kim Ulfers,
Here.
Lance Caddy,
Absent.
Bob Elliott,
Here.
Josh Port,
Absent.
and Tom Wells is absent also. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. First up we have is the Budget Committee Chair. I'll accept nominations for the chair for today.
I'd like to nominate Counselor Nassar.
I'd second that.
It's been nominated and he's been nominated. I'm sorry.
Moved and seconded.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. God, that pizza just like freaked me out or something.
It's those olives.
It's been moved and seconded to appoint Budget Committee Chair Gamal to the Budget Chair. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You are the chair and I hand that over to you. And good luck, and I hope it's better than I'm having today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. And how do we proceed?
I have a statutory requirement to deliver the budget message. So
Absolutely.
I will,
The secretary.
We have to do
Secretary.
we
Secretary
have
has
to
to
do
do
the
that.
secretary first.
oh, got it. Don't have an agenda.
You call for a nomination
So
for the
we
secretary.
need a nomination for secretary.
I nominate KJ Ulfers.
Second.
We have a nomination and a second for KJ Olfers as secretary. Have a motion to pass. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
I don't
Secretary
do
it is.
anything. I don't do anything, but go ahead.
You will this time. All right, Nancy, you have the floor.
Thank you. And for the record, Nancy Brewer, City Manager. I get,
Can I stop you first?
I'll
Good to
stop
the
you.
approval.
We have to approve last year's budget meetings first.
So you should have a
Yeah, I see
agenda.
it now.
So if we just go down the agenda,
All right,
then we'll
very
get
well.
to Nancy in a minute.
Actually, I have a number of questions, but they're just update questions as it relates to the minutes, but I'm gonna wait for what we're gonna talk about, and then I'll go back and see if there's any other questions. So is there a motion to approve the minutes for last year?
I move to approve the minutes from May 5th, 2021.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The May 5th, 2021 budget has passed, and we'll move on to presentation. Fiscal
Now?
year 2022, 2023.
now I get to talk.
Miss Nancy Brewer.
Thank you again. For the record, Nancy Brewer, City Manager. And I will note for the record that the department directors are in the audience and they will answer questions specific to their budgets should they come up and I can't answer them or Matt can't. I do have the statutory requirement and frankly, the pleasure of delivering the budget message to the Budget Committee every year. For those of you who don't know me well, I love the budget. I think it's the best thing we do every year. Budget set policy, what gets funded is what gets done, and this is one of the big ticket items that the city does every year that says, here's what we're going to do, and lays it out for the community to see what's going on. In general, the community economy is strong. We have come through COVID. Although there still are upticks in cases, we seem to be maintaining a healthy community. Clearly, we lost some businesses through COVID, but we had a lot of new businesses start. They are going well. City offices are open again. We are back to activities at the senior center, and congregate meals started back up this week. It's good to see people back in that building, maskless and enjoying activities. and to see our offices at City Hall returning to normal. I started during the pandemic and I thought, boy, we sure have a big parking lot. There are no cars here. And that parking lot is full most days these days as we have everybody back working full time. And I will say that as an economic issue, Lebanon is not exempt from the supply side challenges, the inflation issues that we have frankly, in the world right now. Inflation is high everywhere. It is abnormally high for the United States right now, but we hope that that will get better as supply side improves and the rest of the world comes out of COVID and we start seeing things moving forward. We do have a balanced budget in all funds moving into next year, but it is using some fund balance in the general fund. That continues to be an area of concern. We have a lot of big projects coming, some maybe a little more invisible in the community than others. The West Side Interceptor is on target. That project is going well and is on schedule. We have not had any delays. It is within budget. Maybe a little bit of savings coming out of that, which will be beneficial to the entire community. And we are seeing, we recognize the disruption in the community for the people who can't drive through certain parts of town right now. But as construction is getting buttoned up, we're looking forward, for example, to Airway being repaved and reopened in the next month and a half or so. So we are seeing that progress move as it's supposed to. I think there's a lot of excitement in the city about the potential developments coming at Cheetah Lake with the federal or the state grant money that's coming there. The opportunity really to start seeing some improvements that the community has wanted for a long time is exciting, and it's good to see us moving forward with that. The budget this year doesn't include construction. It really includes the work efforts that we're going to undertake to complete design, do some grant applications. We don't expect construction is going to start until 2023 following Strawberry Festival. So we'll get a little bit of that spend right at the very end of June next fiscal year. But right now it's working on refining those plans. The wastewater treatment plant we took over a couple of years ago. It is good for me to be able to report operations there are stable. A lot of the problems have been addressed. We are in the midst of working on a wastewater treatment master plan that will help us set direction into the future. I knew there'd be at least one more horn blow there. But it is good to see that we are not having raw sewage going to the river. The testing that is underway for our DEQ permit is helping to inform what will be needed at that plant in the future. And I think it's important to note the legal settlement money we are continuing to hold for those future improvements coming probably sometime after 2024, after the master plan is updated and we know what the next phases of work are that will be needed there to meet all of our DEQ permit requirements. We are starting the work to replace body cameras and video cameras in cars for the police department. The system we have is old, it's getting kludgy, it's very hard to redact information and then to be able to make video available to the public or to attorneys without showing things that are confidential. So we're looking forward to getting that update. That's an important tool for our police department. And as we watch departments around the nation struggle with rolling out body cameras, it's important to note we've had those for years to the extent that we're now updating and replacing them. The budget before you does include cost of living adjustments for city employees. We have labor agreements with AFSCME that have a floor and a ceiling. The ceiling is 3%. It's tied to looking at CPI, and we all know CPI has been much higher than that, but we are doing a 3% COLA for our AFSCME members. Our Teamsters contract for police calls for a ceiling of 4%, so police will be getting a 4% COLA. And non-union employees are also getting 4%, and that's largely to make sure that we don't hit compression with management staff in the police department as officers get a 4% increase. Future issues coming down the pipeline, infrastructure continues to be a major concern. We have a new water plant. We will be seeing updates coming for the wastewater treatment plant as we work through the master plan there. But the pipes in the ground, water, sewer, storm drainage, those systems are aging and are way beyond, in some cases, way beyond what their expected lifespan should be. We are continuing to work to invest there. I would say, I don't know if it's with bated breath or great fear, we're waiting on getting the rules from the federal government for the Infrastructure and Jobs Act money that is coming. There are enormous amounts of money coming from the federal government for infrastructure development and improvements. How that rolls from the federal government to state, from the state to either local governments or counties to go to locals is yet to be seen. I will tell you from my perspective, I'm really hopeful that we just get a check for here's 10 million for water and 10 million for sewer and 10 million for streets. I don't think it's going to be that easy. But we're waiting to see what projects we might have that can take advantage of those resources to the greatest extent possible, because the more we can do that, the less we have in terms of rate impact on our ratepayers to address some of these longstanding infrastructure needs that are pretty significant. Again, the general fund, long-term fiscal health is of concern. And I think as we look at needs, there isn't a department right now in the organization that doesn't have a need for more staffing. And we've held the line on that this year. We've added one position in engineering, and that's largely to address the significant amount of frankly, of development happening in the community and making sure that we can keep up with the infrastructure needs for new development. But we did not add any additional positions. We need them in police, finance, senior center. Parks could use at least one FTE and probably 2 or 3. And as we see Cheetah Lake Park develop, we'll have to develop a staffing plan. And I would expect in the future, we will need to add staff resources for parks to address what will be a higher level of maintenance for that park once it's fully developed. All of that puts pressure on the general fund. We did better this year, the current fiscal year, than expected in terms of some additional value from development coming onto the tax rolls. I expect we will see that through the next several years, depending upon some additional development that's maybe out in the pipeline, has not come to fruition, but certainly is being talked about. Additional value to the tax rolls helps our bottom line in terms of bringing in revenue, but at some point it also tilts towards needing more services. So at some point you add enough more people that you really need more police officers on the street to address the calls for service. You need maybe another park, and you start adding more pressure to our limited parks crew to maintain those parks. So I think that's something we're watching carefully as we move forward in time and looking at what our alternatives are in terms of addressing that general fund long-term need. In closing, I just want to say I have appreciated working with the department directors, working together in terms of developing a budget and coming in with, they did a good job. I know every one of them had a long list of wants and needs. And they really held back on putting those issues forward, just recognizing the bottom line of where we are. But it is a fun group. It's a dedicated group of people who work really hard for this community every day. And I really appreciate the opportunity to work with them. And with that, I'm going to stop and answer questions.
Questions?
I have a question. On the Infrastructure Improvement and Jobs Act, I know that this is federal funds, but do we have any idea, ballpark whatsoever, any indication from the state what that might look like coming down to us, or?
We do not. Some of them, so some of the grants have, the rumor mill has, and I think this is probably true for water and wastewater infrastructure, there's a lot of discussion that if the project would be eligible for a state revolving fund loan, it would be perhaps likely eligible for IIJA, and they are talking about using that office to do the allocations. Probably, my assumption is because that office is used to reviewing those infrastructure projects and has the staff with that level of expertise. Um, I I would like to say that this infusion of resources is all going to be beneficial, but I think it's important to recognize they're federal funds, and federal funds come with a lot of strings about how they're used, how they're reported on, putting us oftentimes into Davis-Bacon wage requirements that can drive costs up. We certainly know costs have increased significantly for construction, and that lead time on things like pipe for sewer projects or water projects can be 12 to 18 months. And as we see this huge infusion of money nationwide, that's going to probably drive those materials costs up. And there are not that many contractors out there who can do these large projects. And when you have a bunch of communities investing in large projects at the same time, you're going to drive up those labor costs, and it's going to be harder to get that money available and spent within the time frame that we're going to probably be tied to. I think we're doing our level best to have projects that are ready. Some of the projects, I sat in on a webinar on Monday on some of the street fund money that's coming out. They have money for developing safe streets in a community, but they want a fully developed safe streets plan before they have money for allocation of development. And that development of a plan is going to be time intensive in terms of community feedback and input and getting a full plan together that meets the federal requirements that would then let you turn around and apply for grants for doing the actual construction. And I think to some extent, we will have to look at that and say, you know, is it worth spending, say, $50,000 on developing a plan when you're going to turn around and apply for a grant for $25,000 for a project? And so we'll have to balance that as we see what those requirements are as they start coming out of the federal agencies. I think it's intriguing when you get in. It's a long bill. No one wants to read it. But they have taken these ginormous pots of money, and it's like, well, here's maybe a pot that is for safe streets, and here's a pot that's for rural streets, and here's a pot that's for county highways. And so they've kind of hived it up with a lot of those allocations tied to a lot of federal goals. And so around streets, a lot of that is around traffic safety, trying to get to zero traffic deaths. So those, and there's been a lot of discussion about, are you using those monies to expand the system or improve what you have in an existing system? And I think that we will see with Oregon, maybe hopefully a little bit more focus on improving what you have instead of expanding what is already, you know, like expanding I-5 or something like that. But more of that money coming to local communities to improve, whether it's safety or it's road surface or separated bicycle and pedestrian lanes, those kinds of safety improvements to reduce vehicle, pedestrian, vehicle, bike, vehicle accidents.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Other questions? Ms. Nancy, I have a question regarding ARPA.
Yes.
It wasn't mentioned. We're expecting to do a report in 2024. When is that due for ARPA funds?
So we report on ARPA funds to the federal government. We just filed one April 30th, so semi-annual for us, annual for us. And so we have filed our report for 2022. We'll have another one due in a year. We have identified what has been allocated, the purposes for monies allocated so far, and then what's been spent to date so far. And that's really all we have to do in terms of reporting to the federal government. As noted in the message, we're sitting on about $300,000 still in ARPA dollars. I would like to see what we get in terms of IIJA money that would, where the federal program goals that you have to meet to apply for the money align with our local goals. and see if we can align those. That would help me when I talk with Ron about it. There's kind of a difference between you get $500,000 for sewer lines or you get $10 million for sewer lines. And if we got $10 million for sewer lines, I would feel more comfortable looking at that $300,000 going to other stuff. If it's $500,000, it may be that sewer line replacement would be what I would recommend as a higher priority for that money. And that's just, we're just kind of in that waiting period to see what comes out of it.
Do we foresee any reporting challenges at all?
No, we haven't had any. The report's relatively straightforward, relatively simple. For the ARPA dollars, it really was, in many respects, that came to us as a blank check. There were some basic guidelines on it, but over time, even some of those guidelines were softened. So early on, it was water or sewer infrastructure and an extremely difficult test on revenue replacement. And the final rules came out and said, well, if you can use up to $10 million of your ARPA dollars for revenue replacement with no proof that you lost $10 million in revenue. And Matt and I had a discussion about, well, do we just file it as revenue replacement? And we kind of said, well, we've already done the allocation for the West Side Interceptor and for some IT cybersecurity stuff. So we felt like we could stay project focused in our reporting. And I think there's some benefit in our relationship, such as it is with the federal government, in being able to say that we have spent that money on community needs, as opposed to we just replaced revenue and don't ask us what we did with the money. I am kind of a believer that when we follow the rules, we report well with the federal government, that makes us a good risk for them to give us more money. And I would like to be a good risk and have them give us more money. So that's kind of where we are in terms of our reporting on that.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Since you brought it up, and maybe the chief would be best in answering this, but as far as our the camera systems, when I watch nationally, the issues regarding some of that, for example, that the officer has to turn it on before anything's recording, and there was something in the news recently that it recorded 60 seconds before he turned it on, and I was wondering what are the workings of our system and any limitations, and what is this upgrade that we're looking at doing? What will it accomplish?
So I'm going to ask Frank if he would come up and, thought he was back there. Yeah, he sits in the very back. If he can talk a little bit about the technology that we're acquiring and what it can do. And because it's technology, Brent clearly comes to the table as well.
Thanks for asking the question.
Is your mic on?
Is it on now? All right. I can't really, why is it red? It should be, red means stop. Anyway, thanks for asking the question regarding the camera system that we're upgrading to. I'll pass it to more on the technology side. My right-hand man there is going to answer that for you. But for the most part, our current system, what we have now is just becoming inadequate. It's not recording what it should be recording. Right now, the officers do have to turn it on and before they step out of the car, before it's recording. And the dash cam system in itself is just very old. So to keep up with the times, that's what we want to do, is just upgrade the entire system across the board. The dash cams on the vehicles, as well as on the person body cam. And the system that we're going to is a lot more durable. It doesn't necessarily, it's still going to require officers to activate it prior to turning on, but it will record that 60 seconds prior to them recording it. It should. Yes, he says it should. So, did you have any other questions in regards to that, or?
I had a question about that 60 second. Does it mean it's always recording,
Yeah.
but will only hold the 60 seconds prior to being turned on?
Well, I think there is a distinction between the body car video and the body camera, or I'm sure the in-car video that's mounted in the car and then the body cam video. And so that is one that I want to research and make sure that we get you a correct answer on that. The units that will be in the patrol cars are always recording. And so to get that 60 seconds is a very easy thing. The body cams that's why some of the problems have come up that you hear on the news, especially if they're involved in a tussle and a contact is made and a button gets pressed where it stops the video.
Right.
The units that are in the cars right now were installed in 2012. And so I commend the chief. We were one of the first, police departments in the state to go with in-car video and body cams for our size. But all of the units are old, and we're seeing it's becoming a liability to have those units in the cars because they are so unreliable. At this point in their age, we're past warranty. So the cameras are hooked up to, like, if you activate your sirens or brakes or you accelerate or you're in a crash, it automatically turns it on. The new system that we're going to is integrated. And so if the car activates the video, it will also activate the unit on the officer. If there's two officers in a car, it will activate both their units. So it ties all that together when somebody's reviewing the evidence. And so those are the reasons that we were looking to move to a new system. Yeah.
We're looking at doing that within the next year, 24 months?
Yeah, we've been looking at doing this for the past year, and we're actively and aggressively moving in that direction, just due to the fact of our system that we have currently in place is just becoming old and inadequate. It's not recording what it should, and then recording what it shouldn't, and sometimes they just fall off and not work. And we've had a couple instances where there's been a situation, but the body cam said it was recording and it wasn't, or then it wasn't downloading properly. So there's just a lot of issues with our current system that we have, and going to a new system. And I think Nancy mentioned it, and being able to redact some information with our old system, we have to outsource to do that. Hopefully with the new system, we'll be able to redact in-house to get those videos where they need to go.
And all recordings are available as public record?
No,
No,
not as of right now.
because they're not available or because?
Because we just simply, we can't redact the information, so it's not available. But the hope is that with the new system, we'll be able to do that.
Okay. Do we get a lot of requests?
We do, not a whole lot, but I anticipate getting more and more as time goes on.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Chief before he? All right, thank you, gentlemen. We ready to move on?
I am, yes.
Okay, so,
Call for public
So-
comments.
all right. My glasses on. Are there any public comments? Were there any submitted?
We've got Cassie Cruz that has one for the LDA.
Okay,
I think everybody has at their place. We got an email with a request from Lebanon Downtown Association that's a written request at your place.
Yes,
And
it's there.
it's in here.
Here? Okay.
Yeah, and okay, it's on. And I was just coming, just if you guys had any questions regarding that. I didn't know if you read through it. Excuse me. I'm actually gonna grab my drink really quickly and then I'll go back up. Okay. So yes, if there was any questions regarding that, something I did want to kind of put in there, say, but I'm going to take a quick drink of this. Something that is not in there that I just kind of want to draw attention to, and I think it's probably one of the more important pieces. I mean, we want tourism dollars, right? We want people to come into our community. We want people spending money and keeping money in our community. We don't want to see it going to Amazon. We don't want to see it going to Albany or anywhere else, Salem, Portland, as people travel. And what we're seeing since the pandemic, people are traveling more, obviously. We've been home. We want to get out. We want to explore Oregon again, and maybe even further. So with that, what we're seeing outside of that, the money we're bringing in, what we're really creating, we have created, and what this was shared, and I'm more than happy to share a copy as soon as I get it. Last week, I sat on the Oregon Heritage Conference. So I sat alongside a bunch of other nonprofits and entities, museums, the carousels, other downtown associations, just about talking about what we bring to our communities. And part of what we bring is a sense of belonging, and we create belonging. One of the things that they had spoken to within that sense of belonging is that it does create deeper and greater connection. So areas that did not have events or people were not getting out, you did see areas of like anxiety and depression happen greater because people did not have that connectivity. And if anyone remembers when a few years ago, we were looking at becoming a blue, whatever that was, we were becoming that centennial type of community, looking at that, whatever that was, looking like someone who knows what I'm talking about, but we get it. Part of that was belonging. To be lived to be a centennial, whatever, over 100 years, you need basic things. And one of that is a sense of belonging and community and social activity. And so that's what we had brought for our community members over the last few years, and especially during the pandemic when things were just shut down, whether it was making pathways during the pandemic for outside seating for our restaurants and streamlining that process. So that daunting task for a group of individuals who are having to pivot their complete way of life were able to, and make that easier for them. We were able to make that happen and get people back to eating outdoors, socializing. That's something you will find in there. That's just all the hard numbers I think I had given during that 2021 report. But that's something I did want to share that we do create here. And if we want to see our community members live long, healthy lives, we need to continue to bring opportunities that don't just bring in investment to our community, but bring in that emotional piece that is priceless, because a sense of life is priceless. So with that said, that's not in there, but if there's any questions, since you guys have all had time while I was talking to look over it, I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Cassie, I have a question in regards to we as a council handed LDA the Arts Commission.
Yes.
How is that functioning at the moment?
Excuse me. It's going slowly but surely. Part of the first couple months for the Arts Commission was to get people acclimated to Downtown Association. The other part of that is prior to LDA having the Arts Commission, because I sat on the Arts Commission as a vice chair, there's a lot of things we did when it was underneath the city, but the city, I'll be honest, the staff had taken a lot on undertaking when it came to that. So acclimating people to being more that boots on the ground that LDA volunteers really are, is going at a slow but steady process. So we do have more people who have been a part of LDA that have joined the Arts Commission that are helping to bring the about the the sculpture project and everything else. So it has been a little bit of a slower onboarding than I'd like, but that's just, I think, anytime you come into a new organization and you're just kind of learning the ropes. But it is slowly but surely going, and I look forward to more people joining us because we've had a lot more interest of our youth volunteers as well, who are excited about that. So we should be seeing, I will have more to update about that here sooner than later at the council meeting.
Do you currently have, or have you recruited the skill sets that you think are needed?
Oh, absolutely. We have some really great talent in our community. And I will say this, because I hope everyone watches, of course, a budget meeting through Zoom, but we are always looking for people. So, because there's sometimes it takes a little bit for someone to step up to the plate and put their talents and skills out there, because you are giving a piece to yourself, and we do recognize. So like our youth, we are really trying to create pathways for them to have that ability to, for one, to have that investment in their community, because when you produce within your community, whether it's through volunteerism or you're doing a mural project or whatever it may be, that is your investment forward, and that's the pride in your community that you have going forward. So, and that's also that buy-in that a kid will have when they're 6 years old, walking around showing or a 6-year-old growing up, showing their grandkids what they've done from such a young, small age. So we are slowly but surely getting there more and more, which is kind of nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, man.
Any other questions?
Sure. Really quickly, Cassie. First, congratulations on all the work that you've completed over the last year. I know having a vibrant downtown, it was really nice over COVID, especially this last year as things started to open up. So kudos to you and the board and the association as a whole, Dr. Davis, everyone for their work on that. Can you kind of explain how this extra, I see you're requesting an extra $5,000. Can you explain how that would help, how that helps the downtown association?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, there's a couple of functions of that, and I'm sorry that what breakdown wasn't in there, but there's a couple of functions on how that happens or how that would helps downtown association function for a greater community. One, the ability to produce and to get more content and to drive better initiatives. Right now, we have the position for the Main Street manager sitting at 32 hours. The Main Street manager works obviously more than that. It takes more than that to make this community function. But that allows us to be able to finally move that to a full-time position, which then gives us better accreditation underneath the Oregon Main Street. Something I wish we would have put in there, but I can send all of you if you would like, is our accreditation underneath the Oregon Main Street program has changed slightly because of COVID and just different structures being put into place. For us now to be considered an affiliate, because we're still not kind of transforming stage, if any of you are familiar with the program, we do need the Main Street manager to be actually like a full-time Main Street manager. So that's part of how those funding can go into there, helps within that. And then two, it just helps us continue on a lot of the projects that we have expanded kind of like within just bringing greater arts to our community and giving more time for that onboarding process of not just getting people on board for the downtown association, but what it's actually really needing and taking that recovery process for not just for an organization that's gone through the pandemic, but for our volunteers. We have one paid staff member and everyone else is a volunteer who has a business, who's had to go through that pivot in life and who are still in a recovery process if they have the help even there. So the Main Street manager position, has also been leaned on a lot more heavily over the last couple of years than it had years past, just because of the pandemic, which we are slowly, of course, as we all know, moving out of a recovery process. And to you. Mhm.
Any other questions? Ms. Cassie, when the council asked LDA to take on the Art Council, we didn't increase those funds at that time, did we?
You guys gave us funding of 8,000, yes, to help with the kind of like us get going for administrative cost to getting the Art Commission going.
All right. Could you help the council understand what the build, buy, and lease in Lebanon guide is?
Yes, and it's something that is, I think, sent for approval. But if you had watched, I don't know if any of you had sat in on, and I'm going to say RAIN wrong, and I might even look at Kelly behind me, Hart, to say it correctly, but RAIN stands for the Regional Accelerator something network, but it brings all our communities together and really works for our entrepreneurs to be able to get them established, launched, and educated. So the Build, Buy, Lease Guide was started being created as a brainchild of Alicia Rogers, our economic catalyst, who is our board chair, not board, excuse me. Yes, she is our chair for our Economic Vitality Committee, which functions on obviously the economic vitality of our downtown. Part of that is to be able to help businesses to be able to start a business and feel comfortable emerging into our downtown. We saw, as Nancy had mentioned, we had a lot of business, some businesses closed, but a lot of businesses open. Within those businesses, part of that, and we did see, and I'm sure any of you are close enough to anybody who's owned a business during that pandemic, there was a sense of loss when you have to sit there and I think pivot. And if we could make that pivoting moment easier for somebody in life, or that startup moment of their life of starting a business or or to buy a building, lease the building, or construct in our community, then we wanted to make that easier. So we had worked with City of Lebanon. We worked with Laura Gillot, home team, Bill Flusher, since he's our commercial real estate agent in our community. And we worked with the Chamber of Commerce to be able to put at least one document, or kind of an easy info guide of how do you even get started here in Lebanon. So if we're open for business, welcoming people, we need to be able to make that step by step easy for them to feel like, we are walking alongside them. So that's what that guide was started. And that guide was featured in the RAIN video that was shown to the county commissioners a few weeks back, I think maybe last month. I was not there, I apologize. I couldn't tell you exactly when.
So this is a written document?
It's a written document, yes.
Can the council members get a copy of
If
that?
you would like a copy, I can get you a copy.
Be awesome.
All right, I'll do it next week.
One thing I don't see here is you mentioned Bill. And
Pleasure.
there's a little program that you guys do with video and the.
So Spacewalk.
Spacewalk. thank you.
Yeah, so that was started out of the pandemic again, and continued through a little bit of 2021. And actually, we are currently working on what was done with the pandemic. Let me back up a little bit. The spacewalk was through video, as Gamal had said, that we just kind of recorded it. I will be honest, if you go on our YouTube and look at it, it's pretty choppy. I tried. I didn't have the best Wi-Fi connection, but we were just showing people through utilizing Zoom and other platforms of YouTube, the spaces that we have available in Lebanon. So if people were wanting to buy. Currently, now that we have shifted to in-person, and of course, always making platforms through online as we have done now, we are now going to be constructing and putting together an actual spacewalk where we're going to be advertising to everybody outside our region, within our Economic Vitality Committee. And I should say that has people like Cody Zanella, who's with Key Bank, Alicia Rogers, as I said, is a chair. Gam sits on that within as our downtown representative. And then we have, I think I just named everybody. And then looking, of course, to grow that committee as well. Always looking to grow committees. So that there will be an in-person event where people from around the area will be able to see what we have to offer and talk with people like Bill Flusher and get those ideas or get questions answered. And then possibly the goal is to have people like contractors in. So if there's questions for a space that may need a little renovation, then they can ask those there. So kind of make it all inclusive all at once. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop, so to speak.
Focus on these available spaces and bringing people in to buy or rent or lease these
Yep.
spaces.
Whatever
their
you can.
businesses.
Yes, to bring more business to Lebanon, to promote it.
The last thing I want to say is I've had some conversations with other counselors, and the new reporting style that shows
You like that?
what's going on and people coming into town and where they're from is fantastic, and I urge you to continue. And it gives us a really clear understanding of
Yeah.
the good that some of these activities and events that are happening here in Lebanon is doing in terms of tourism and community folks coming out and heads and beds, if you will. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and actually, that report, so I do a quarterly report for the Oregon Main Street that has it records all of our volunteer hours and a lot of businesses opening, closing, and other assets or items in there. So I will deliver a report to you guys like that quarterly after I do my Oregon Main Street report, so you guys can kind of see what's going on quarterly. So it doesn't make the year report so much at once. We can kind of just highlight it, and then I'll come in once a month, just let you guys know like what's going on, just to kind of let you guys know what events we're having going on, whatever else. If you have, or of course, any questions you guys may have.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Ms. Cassie.
All right, thank you guys, appreciate you all.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we add $5,000 to the budget for the LDA.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 So moved. Thank you. Congratulations. So next on the agenda is presentation of department budgets. Miss Nancy Brewer.
And I think Matt and I were going to just do this in a very brief, I think Matt mostly in a high level way. And then again, the department directors are here to answer questions if you have any questions about their specific information. But I think in the past, going line by line through the budget has not proven to be beneficial. And so they'll be here and can answer questions if you've got them. Matt, you want to do just a high-level summary?
I guess first to start off, can everybody hear me, especially out there? Okay. First, I want to thank the department directors and Nancy for working on putting this budget together. It's taken a lot of time. It's ended up, I think, pretty good. It's a balanced budget, which is good. Some of the things to note on the broad scale is, as you can see here in the budget overview, our revenues in all the funds combined is estimated to be $46,098,256, which is a decrease from the previous year's budget. Some of that is because we're not getting ARPA money again this year, and we don't know what type of additional funding we'll receive. Some of that is let me go down. I can make sure I can tell you. Some of that is some fees that we either moved into different areas, transfers out or transfers in between funds have decreased. A major one is the West Side Interceptor showed loan proceeds coming in, which increased our revenue. Since we've done a good majority of that project, we're now not going to be receiving that money next year, which decreased what that revenue would be. But that's just a quick overview on the revenue. From the expense side, our total budget is for $86,930,971. That's an overall increase in the total budget by 18%. You might say, how do you have a decrease in revenue and an increase in expenditures? And that comes from the fund balance, which we've tried to remove out of what we call revenue to make sure that that money that we carry over from year to year, while it's great and we can use it on projects and stuff like that, it's not new revenue that we can continue to use for operations on a year-to-year basis, because it won't be there year after year if you spend it in one year. That's the overview of the total budget. I'm happy to dive into specific details. We go into, in the budget document, we go into the specific revenue lines. This is one thing that we have tried over the past year to kind of match up with how the financial statements actually look. And so you'll see a lot of things have changed from year to year. We've added some new ones. Tried to separate some things out, like previously it was all property taxes and assessments together. We've now made it property taxes, other taxes, and then system development charges being separate. Franchise fees have been removed and are separated from other fees and permits. Just so that way, if people are trying to understand what it is, it's a lot easier to understand franchise fee than franchise fees and permits. You don't know which is which.
Matt, a question. What's left in other taxes?
Other taxes are going to be, I guess it depends on the fund, but that's going to be marijuana tax. That's going to be transient lodging tax. That's going to be.
Thank you for reminding me.
Yep.
How much should we get up from the marijuana taxes?
How much do we
Receive.
get from?
Oh, there it is.
We-
Never
we
mind.
get
I
about-
think I see it. Is
I
it
mean-
28?
180
Oh,
in the local tax.
Yeah. And then we get 28,000 from the state now, since they changed the law.
that's the number I found. I didn't find the other one. Okay, thank you.
Going through kind of overviews on other costs, personnel costs, Nancy's already kind of gone over. There were increases. Our PERS rate actually has stayed the same. We're hoping it will kind of stay the same as again this next year. Our medical and dental benefits have actually stayed pretty constant, but often those are things that significantly increase. So really our increases in our personnel come from step increases for staff as they're here longer, they move into a different part of the pay scale, and then cost of living increases, which also affects how much you pay in PERS and some of those other things. Materials and services, I guess it all depends on what you're working on, but you guys have seen costs for everything have just increased and increased. So we try and budget that in correctly. Capital outlay, those are for goods and services that have a longer useful life that cost over $5,000. Guess I forgot to get rid of the highlighting on the page numbers. We'll get that cleaned up for the next version. We've tried to separate out the difference between operating expenses and non-operating expenses. So that way you guys can look and see, hey, what's the operating revenue or the new revenue that we pull in and what are our operating expenses? We want to make sure that those are balanced as well. And so some of the things that are non-operating are our bigger projects. They are debt payments. They are things that we collect on behalf of other organizations and then pass that money through to them. But that's kind of the general overview of everything. And so now we can dive into the general fund if there's not any additional questions.
Is this meeting online?
It is.
Could you just kind of define the difference between operating and non-operating expenses generally?
So our operating expenses are the things needed to do our normal operations of business. So that's staff, that's materials and services to support those staffs, to do our routine maintenance and programming that we offer throughout the city. Those non-operating expenses are the larger projects that we talk about. The West Side Interceptor is a good example of that. There's still things that are needed, but usually you're finding funding outside of your normal operating revenue. Is that detailed enough? Do you want
I
more?
think so. Anybody have any questions on that?
Matt, do you anticipate SDC charges to increase this coming year?
From the city
building- the
increasing them or
building.
just from the amount of,
Amount of building that's going to happen.
I don't know that I would say they were going to increase from last year. Last year was pretty high. There is the opportunity that they will increase more than that, but I think from last budget to this budget, I do believe there was a slight increase in the budget, but compared to what we actually saw in the last year, I don't know that we'll see an increase in that. We had a lot go
I
on
was
this past
recently
year.
asked a question about those kind of fees, and when do those fees actually become available to us? Once the project is approved or when it's finished?
So most of those fees are charged at the time of the permits. But we do allow currently to let people finance those. So we have over $1 million of SDCs that have been financed that we don't have to spend on anything. Eventually we'll get them, but until we do, that money just sits there and we can't spend it.
When do we get those funds?
So currently we have a 10-year repayment schedule. And so it's either 10 years or if someone sells the property, they're required to pay those off as well.
Right. Thank you.
Ms. Nancy,
Yes,
is this document available to the public
it is. It's on our website.
on our website? I just want to kind of say out loud for those that are interested, page 6 and 7 that just outlines the budget process is a great document to read. Gives you an example of what we go through, what we're supposed to go through, and kind of an understanding of the timelines. So for those listening and want to gain a clear perspective of how this works, page 6 and 7 is fantastic to read. Thank you for outlining that, by the way.
Sure. Thank you.
Please continue. Looks like a little bit of 8-2.
I'm just trying to move.
Actually, I think I'm right. It's 7 and 8, page 7 and 8.
It's easier for me.
Okay. It's not going to work the way. Okay, so jumping back to the general fund. The general fund is where the majority of the city property tax comes in. We do have a little bit that comes into the general obligation bond fund, but this is where the majority of the property taxes come in. This is where the franchise fees come in, and this is for the services that the city provides that you don't really get a fee for. And so you can see that our revenue in the general fund is decreasing from last budget. That decrease is due to the ARPA money being removed out of the budget from 2022 to the 2023 budget. That 3 million that is going to be used for the West Side Interceptor has been moved to the sewer fund to be used in that location. But that's the majority of what's decreasing. You can see we're budgeting property taxes to increase by about $370,000.
Is that due to increased residences or just an increase in taxes?
That's going to be an increase in the assessed values, and then also new development that's coming. That's our estimate to make that. Let's see. Everything else has pretty similar to previous years from the revenue side. You can see last year we got rid of a lot of different things that have traditionally been budgeted in the general fund, and those will continue to be budgeted into those internal service funds. But there has been a decrease in the council budget. And that's just based on going through line items of what's needed and what wasn't needed. You can see there's been slight increases in other funds. Community development had a large grant last year that is no longer going to be there or has been partially paid. Police budget has increased due to the cost of personnel. That's where a lot of their costs come from. Like I said earlier, the non-departmental budget decreased significantly. That's the ARP money. Are there any other questions related to the overall? And do you want me to go into more detail on any specific department? I'm happy to do that.
Anyone? How many goes by every?
I think they look at the council meeting schedule here, plan the trains to come when we're meeting.
The municipal court, does that include the staff?
Correct.
Is that still 3 folks or is that more,
That's 3 folks.
including the judge?
Yes, the judge is not in their personnel costs because he's contracted, but he's in the materials and services of.
Under the municipal court?
Correct.
Of the
Yes.
438,000?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Sure, I have a question. I believe it was last year, or it might have been the year prior, that we allocated funds to the chamber for operations. Is that still reflected in this budget, or was that like a one-time COVID thing now that it's kind of sunsetting? Is that funding still in there? Anyone remember that?
So from my understanding is we've had a contract with them for $85,000. A portion of that was for operations, and then a portion of that was for the
Tourism.
tourism.
Mm.
During COVID, we kind of said, hey, there's not going to be tourism right now. So we we didn't give them that money, but they actually had money that they hadn't spent on tourism at that point that they used towards their operations. So we
Thank
didn't
you. I
have to
remember now. Thank you. Yeah.
send them any money.
So it's the same amount. It's just being got it.
Correct.
Fantastic.
Any additional questions on the general fund?
Have we seen, it's probably a little early, but have we seen anything on the hotel taxes come in yet? On kind of after the fact of everything?
Yeah,
that's
they
happened?
definitely picked back up. I don't know that they're quite as high as they were, but they're definitely enough to sustain the things that we've previously been doing.
Thank you.
Where is that reflected, what line item?
So that's actually not in the general fund, that's in a different fund. Do you want me to move to that now, or do you want me to get there?
In your,
Any other questions?
in your budget, I'll just note it's page 87 is where we start talking about the motel tax fund.
We'll get there.
You want to just wait till we get there?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm going to, if there's no other questions on the general fund, I'm going to skip through those pages and we will get to the administrative service fund, which is on page 43. So this is where we've moved a lot of the things out of the general fund that are really for internal city use. You've got the city manager's office there, HR office there, city attorney, city recorder, and the finance department, all in that fund at this point. From a revenue side, we receive transfer ins from other departments and we allocate those based off of, for the most part, prior year's actual expenses. And so in years, you're going to have some years where some department pays more, other years where they pay less based on how much they've spent in the previous year to kind of true up that cost throughout the departments. From an expense standpoint, things are pretty stable there. City manager's office went slightly down. HR office slightly up. City recorder slightly up. Finance slightly up. And then city attorney actually remained the same since we have a contract that goes for several years. And then the non-departmental part of that is just transfers out for the other internal service funds and the PERS bond. Is there any questions on that? We've got information technology fund. Again, this is transfers in funded. They did increase this last year, or we're proposing an increase for this next year. As you guys know, a lot of things depend on our information technology, from cybersecurity to pretty much everything else that people in the city do. It's all done on computers and technology. And you'll see we mistakenly did not update the number here correctly. That's my fault, and we'll get that updated on the next one, on the next version. But this should be 6 employees. So that's where you're seeing an increase from previous. Additionally, there's increased costs and things that need to be replaced. I believe one of the big things that needs to be replaced is the battery backup system for the servers in the Justice Center. And then just the continual renewing and replacing of equipment before it has issues. Any questions on the Information Technology Fund?
I know we had some conversations about the safety of the system. Where are we with that, and how does that relate to the increased costs? Do you know?
I guess, what do you mean by safety of the system?
Making sure that the system is safe from
The
from
cybersecurity
phishing and
funding?
hacking and all that kind of stuff.
So you see that We have acquired a couple of the tools. We are about to acquire, I think, 2 more for cybersecurity. You see a slight increase in contract costs associated with that because these are um, subscription services. That's the term I was looking for. And so we're going to pay an amount each year by maintaining those subscriptions. Every time there is a problem found in that software, we get updates and we get routine patches then from IT delivered to every computer in the system to make sure that any bugs found are cleaned up right away. So we are, I think, almost done with all of that $75,000 with acquiring and implementing all those tools. I know IT came through my office last week or early this week and, bumped me off for a little while they updated a couple of things, including, I think, my virus software and some other, I still had a service that ran on an old Microsoft package that they updated to run on Edge instead of Explorer. So those kinds of things. And we have been looking for a couple of cybersecurity training systems that would do just online reminders. Don't open phishing emails. How do you recognize them? Those kinds of things to make sure that we're maintaining a safe system. It's not just the computer, it's the idiot who operates it. And we need to continue to remind the idiots that operate it that people are out there coming up with brilliant new ways to rob you blind, and you got to pay attention to that and what you do.
So how would we rate the city in terms of how safe we may be at the moment, other than the actuating, the folks that are pushing the button?
Do you want to answer that, Brent, or do you?
So I would say we've been very aggressive in the last year. COVID changed a lot of things for the IT department because suddenly everybody was working from home. And so with that became a lot more mobility and plus increased phishing threats. One step we took was sending our senior network engineer, Nico Bressler, to a cybersecurity course at Portland State University this spring. He was able to hear from state agency leaders in the cybersecurity space, as well as Homeland Security leaders. And that allowed us to bring in tools that were offered at the Homeland Security level, which gives Homeland Security, which is operating a 24/7 NOC back there, or a security operations center with people who are trained to looking at that from both a workstation level and a network level for what is going in and out of our network. The biggest threat is email and phishing. And that is, as Nancy said, that is entirely a staff issue and a training issue. And so we've been very aggressive. Sometimes we'll send 2 or 3 emails a week out to all staff saying, hey, there's been an issue. We have found that the most helpful way to address that is to say, here's exactly what came in. Thank you for, reporting it, and everybody be alert so that it doesn't go wild. And we also have acquired tools that will allow us to purge emails. So if 100 emails come in and 5 people click on it or they report it, we can purge that from the rest of the user base without everybody having to go through the same decision process. We met this morning with city county insurer, our representative up there who's in the cybersecurity space. Cybersecurity is increasingly difficult to get as insurance because from what I understand, it's about $4 million is the cost of a ransomware attack or if your network gets locked. And that, so that, that number gets my attention. And so a lot of these measures we're taking are insurance for the city. And in meeting that, CIS has increased their requirements from last year to this year. There's 3 different levels of cybersecurity insurance. The first one is $50,000, which doesn't buy much for protection. And that is basically if you have a basic cybersecurity policy, The next level is like multi-factor authentication plus a lot of other items. And that gets us up to a $750,000 policy. And we are in place to be able to, by June 30th, we're going to be in place to be able to take on that, the highest level policy CIS has. And so our stance is if there's a best practice or there's something we can do to protect ourselves, we're going to do it. Because when I attend national webinars of other people who do the same thing for local government and state government, cybersecurity is the number one concern for everyone because it shuts all operations down. And that does not mean that we're not going to get hit. What we're trying to do is just mitigate that risk. And that is why, honestly, our budget is going up because these tools cost more. And along with that, they're making a concerted effort to keep hardware updated. And so they're like, all right, you've got to purge these systems that can no longer address security at an enterprise level. So, I've got my home hat, what I do at home to be prudent and try and save money. And then at the city, we're not trying to waste money, but we also realize everything operates at that level right now. As far as our water plant, our wastewater plant, police, everything is computer related. So it's important. So we're trying to be prudent from that regard.
Any other questions or comments while he's here? Thank you.
Absolutely.
I was just going to say, from my perspective, we're pushing platinum standard. IT takes cybersecurity very seriously, very seriously. And I have to say, as the city manager, I appreciate the seriousness and dedication that they take all day, every day to protect us, because I don't want to be there. I don't want to be there.
You don't want to have to make that phone call.
Nope. Nope, not going to do it.
Agreed. Okay, so we'll move on to custodial maintenance services. Again, this is all money that's being transferred from other funds to support this internal service fund. The amount went slightly down from the previous year, and costs are relatively the same with an increase in some of the departmental operating costs. We've noticed that in some of these funds, we have a lot of unknown expenses that happen during the year, and building maintenance is one of those things. You don't know what's going to break until it breaks. And so we've got an amount in there that's going to help us to just kind of cover those costs when they come up of, hey, this is broken and now we need to fix it. Any questions there? We've got our general obligation bond fund. We receive property tax in, and luckily this year, the only thing coming out of that fund now is just the general obligation bond. At one point, we had combined this bond and refinanced it with a wastewater revenue bond, I believe. And that piece of it got paid off last year. So currently it's just bringing in property taxes to pay off the bonds that we have outstanding. Any questions? Okay, we've got the 2013 Full Faith and Credit Bond Fund. Again, this is transferring from the Urban Renewal District to pay off a bond that the city had. Pretty simple. Any questions? Next one's going to be the pension obligation bond. Back in 2002, the city issued some pension obligation bonds to pay down our rate with PERS. We continue to make payments on that. Each year, we transfer in money from each department that has employees to provide the funds to do that. Any questions?
Interest has gone up to 75,000.
It's actually gone down because it was 85,000. So, and you can see the way it was structured, if you look back at the actual in 2020, the interest amount was pretty high and the principal amount was low. That's just the way that they had structured the bonds, that they got paid off in a different way, but luckily we've got to the point where now we're paying more principal than interest, and we'll continue to do that. Then we get to the utility funds. So I don't know that you want me to go through every specific thing. There's a list of the large capital projects that are coming up. So like for water, we've got the Walker Road water line replacement. That's going to be in conjunction with the West Side Interceptor, the Stoltz Hill water line extension. It's being done with another project as well. Demolition of the abandoned water treatment plant on 2nd Street. We've set some money in reserve for future projects that we can't accomplish this next year, but we know are coming up. So we've got 7th Street water line replacement. We've got reserves for Highway 20 water line replacement. And then some reserves set aside for the automatic meter reading project as well.
Matt, the funds set aside for these capital projects, do they include padding, I guess, for increase in construction costs and whatnot? Anticipated
Anticipated, I don't know that they do.
Because
at
this is what it
point.
is as
Yeah.
of today. if we
It's
were
kind of
to-
as it is. And,
Okay.
you know, as we go through year to year, we're going to be looking at those and saying, okay, next year as we do the budget, do we need to have more in reserve for those? Do we have the funds to put more in reserves there? And then we would be able to do that at that time. So it'll be an annual thing that we're looking at to try and at least probably stay up on what the costs would be.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Matt, the $1 million set aside for the automatic meter read, when and how will that be used, and how does that help the city?
So when will it be used? I don't know specifically when, that's why it's in reserves. But what that would do is that would actually put 2 radio towers up that then a signal could be sent to all the meters that we have. And then all of the meters would then report that information back to those receivers, and then we would be able to view that online. So it would actually make it so a lot of our service guys that are going out to do like a leak check or doing on or off based on people moving in and out, that can actually be done by the finance personnel, because they can just go to this website and say, okay, I'm looking at this meter, I need the read now, and it will pull that read. And then for a leak, you could wait a few minutes, re-pull that same meter, and then say, okay, well, you didn't have any usage between those two time periods, so you don't have a leak at this point. Same that service order done.
That'll let Jason put people to work in other areas, as we talked about.
And then it also makes it so, or monthly when they do meter reads, they actually don't have to go out and do meter reads. It's a click of the button and all the meters have been read.
That's that little gadget on the back side of the top?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
And so, and at some point, it's possible that we could replace some of the meters that we have that would also do like automatic shut off. The ones that we currently have don't do that, but it's an option that's out there. If you maybe had a customer that repeatedly got locked off, you might say, we could go change out that meter and lock and unlock that meter at a push of a button as well.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Matt, for the pictures. Actually, seriously, like the drain pipes and some of those, kind of helps as you're talking about projects and seeing
Yeah.
some of this stuff. So
I
thank
was gonna say, you see some of that and you realize the amount of project it really is.
It's a big pipe.
So, and I'm going to defer that to the directors. They provided all the pictures that they wanted in their sections. So, I guess one thing that I will note is you can see the water fund debt. We've got 2 loans with the state. One will end in 2024. The other will end in 2049. But we have relatively good interest rates on those, especially the one that ends in 2020 or 2049. We have a 1% interest rate on that. So The storm drainage utility fund. This is the fund I know you guys have kind of heard about recently, how it would be great to have some more funding in there. Because projects cost a lot of money and we only bring in about $500,000 in revenue each year. So there's a couple projects here listed. Really the biggest thing is a reserve for the 7th Street reconstruction that we would need to put a new sewer line in. I think if I remember correctly, we really need about $500,000 to do that project from the storm drainage utility. And so we've got a little bit more that we're going to have to collect in the next couple of years to be ready to do that project. Overall, based on the work session that we had with council a couple weeks ago, we've budgeted to increase the fees on this pretty significantly, but overall only increase the fees on the utility as a general by 3%. But that was not increasing water, doing a larger increase to both sewer and storm drainage. So, are there any other questions on the storm drainage fund? Okay. The wastewater utility fund. This one, like I said, the increase on this one was a 4% rate increase. The projects that we have going on, we've got about 8.2 million left for the West Side Interceptor. We've got about 5 million, which is remaining from the loan from the state, and then the 3 million from the ARPA money. And then we've got about 200,000 in utility rates money that we're using towards that project. We've also got just over $1 million in small sewer and lateral replacements. We've got a sewer line or a Strawberry Lane sewer extension project, Stoltz Hill project, and then one of the big things that's going to come up over the next couple of years is the wastewater facility master plan. That's going to help us figure out kind of where we're going in the future, both at the plant and I believe also throughout the network. So we've got, let's see, 750,000 in projects at the wastewater treatment plant that we were proposing to do, and then we've got in reserve 11,621,000 and some change for future projects there at the wastewater treatment plant and also the 7th Street sewer replacement.
I'm sorry, has the money from the lawsuit all been, has that been spent as far as on projects or?
Nope.
No, that's the 11,600,000 is from the settlement.
Okay.
We're holding on to that for those future wastewater treatment plant projects. And we know we're going to have those coming. We want to be able to do as much of that in cash as we can and not do the debt financing. We've talked internally about, should we use that instead of the loan that we're currently processing against for the West Side Interceptor? But it's kind of that loan is at 1.68%. And as we look at the market, future borrowing costs are going to be higher than that. So it's better for us to keep the existing low interest loan
Makes sense.
and we're just going to hold on to the cash. It helps earn interest earnings for that fund. We'll build with that. So that's the direction we've been taking in terms of how we're dealing with that.
Matt, for the community, could we reiterate what staff is seeing in terms of failed sewer mains and laterals throughout the city? Can we kind of elaborate on that just a little bit?
I think I'm going to ask Ron to elaborate on that a little bit more.
It's going to come up.
I can give you the high level, but Ron probably.
How high a level, how detailed do you want me to be? No, so we are seeing a lot of sewer mains that are failing. That's pretty standard for the age of the pipes. Like this year, we've seen a big uptick in our sewer lateral replacement. We had 150,000 budgeted for sewer laterals. Right now, I have on the books about 250,000. So that's just laterals that you're kind of sticking your thumb up in the air and going, how many are going to come through the door this year?
we're starting to see some major main failures. Williams and Wheeler Street, we've got some issues there that we're working through. And then just all the small sewers that we're replacing, Blue Pine, Larkspur, all those areas. The Strawberry Lane sewer is an extension of a sewer main. Back when they put laterals into about 6 houses down there, they ran them through people's yards, backyards, and there's really no way to maintain that or replace any of that. So what we're having to do is extend sewer so that these people have a way to make connection to our new main. So, but there is a lot, and it will continue to be that way. You know, I think we gave in the presentation where we produced 580 some million gallons of water. We're treating almost 1.2 in that same time period. So you can tell how much leakage we've got through groundwater and how much it comes in. So does that help you understand?
I just kind of
Sure.
wanted this community that's listening to know that this is something that we stay on top of and battle
Absolutely.
and put money aside for, but it's something that we have to do.
Yeah, and I guess as Nancy alluded to earlier, one thing that we are seeing is we're about double the cost of materials right now from where we were last year. So.
And that assumes we can get them at all.
Yeah.
Is the rate of failure similar to other cities of our size?
Yeah, I think will find that across the United States. I don't think we're unique in any situation that we have. It's not anything that you talk to other cities in our profession and that they will tell you the same thing.
Is it going to come up and bite us later?
It always could. I never say never, you know, I mean, we do our best. That's why we have our maintenance crews out TVing and videoing and monitoring this stuff so that we can try and stay ahead of it. But that, you know, you're only one break away from a major or catastrophic event, you know. So you just try and stay on top of it. It's hard when they're underground. You can't see as much.
I've got 50 plus year old pipes in my house, and doesn't matter what I do, they're going to fail, and they are failing.
Yeah.
But as it relates to what we put down our pipes in terms of the community, like wipes, for example, as it relates to new pipes versus old pipes, can the community help in minimizing that, these pipes, or does it?
No, probably. I mean,
'Cause
you
it's a
obviously
separate
don't
issue,
flush
right?
wipes and don't flush things that are going to be really, yeah, grease is a big one, probably. You know, we see our sewer crews have to clean grease out of mains. We see a lot of grease at our wastewater plant. I won't describe what that looks like. For
I
anybody.
recently
After you
took
guys
a tour of the wastewater treatment plant. I know what it looks like. You can talk to me afterward.
Actually, everybody should take a tour of the wastewater treatment plant at some
100%.
point. It is
Yeah.
very informative.
Jason was an excellent host. I got to learn lots of things, some which I love to know now, and some which I don't know that I needed to know. But yeah, wipes are actually very, yeah, they should not go down the drain.
Even if the package says it's disposable, it
It's
is
not.
not.
Mm-hmm.
It is not flushable. Trash can only, please. And that will be on the utility bill notices for May.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comment on wastewater?
Good pictures.
Yeah, they really are.
Okay, now we will move on
Thanks,
to,
Jason, for adding those pictures.
now we're going to move on to the motel tax fund. So, there was a question about how much we're bringing in. You can see we dipped a little bit lower. We were 258,000 in 2020, which I believe we caught the beginning of the pandemic at that point. I believe if you go back the year before, we were up closer to about 300,000. As we're looking at the budget for 2022, we really had no idea what to expect, so we just kind of estimated something. It's looking like it's going to come in higher than that. You guys might say, well, then why did 2023 go down? So when we came back to council the last time about the transient lodging tax and having the state collect it, we made it so instead of this fund transferring some admin fee to the general fund, that we were just going to put that directly into the general fund. And so there will be a small portion of the tax that goes directly into the general fund, and then the rest that we have to spend based on the state law will stay here in this fund. But I guess also because you decided to increase the funding for LDA, that is done out of this fund. And I guess the question from me to you would be, that's located in the $75,000 grants section. And so that's going to increase to 80,000. My assumption would be that you guys would like me to decrease the improvements by that 5,000. Can I at least get in? Yeah, that sounds okay to us.
Does to me, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's,
Okay. So that's
That would
what the
only
plan will
place to
be.
take it.
So it won't change the overall budget, but it will just move from improvement line item to the city grants fund. Any other questions on the motel tax fund?
Questions? There's 4 pictures there before and after of the MBVA building and the theater, before and after. Why is that there? What line item does that refer to?
So that is also under that city grants fund. So we currently have the downtown restoration program that's going on, and that's funded in that city grant line item.
That's basically an example of how those funds are used
Correct.
for those businesses.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay. We'll go into the building fund. Besides the lots and lots of development that's been going on, there's not a whole lot that changes in the building fund. We collect permits. We pay to have the contract building inspector go look at those inspections, make sure everything's there. There's an increase in those costs, but that's based on the amount of building that's happening. So, any questions on the building fund? Okay. Park operations funds. Majority of the funding for this actually comes in from a transfer from the general fund. We do get some fees from camping and park reservations. We also get some money from the school district for some landscape maintenance that we also pay for the employees doing that work out of this fund. So it comes in here. Overall, I believe it's pretty similar to the previous years. Increase in the utility costs, purchasing a new vehicle, that kind of stuff. Got some improvements that hopefully will happen in conjunction, I believe, with Cheetah Lake. So, any questions?
Any questions in this area?
Just a comment.
Yep.
I must say that having lived in some other communities, that I'm always impressed with how nice the parks look, and when there's a windstorm blows through and blows trees down, how quickly it gets cleaned up. So I have to give some accolades to parks maintenance.
Good job, Jason.
Making Jason's head get big now.
Jason, is there anything you want to share that the council needs to know?
Camping fees.
We'll figure out how to put you on the spot soon enough.
The monthly camping fees certainly jumped from 30 to,
People are traveling again
That's-
finally.
for 2021, 2022. I just noticed that.
We have like, I think 1 or 2 of the contractors working on West Side Interceptor are living in RVs there on a month-to-month basis. And I think we've got a couple of other people living there on a month-to-month basis who are like building a house. So there are 4 slots, I think, 6 slots that can be rented on a monthly basis on a longer term like that. Everything else is 10 days max, if I'm looking at Jason for a nod.
Do the monthly get a
so-
monthly rate?
We do have a
Okay.
monthly rate. And I will say it's like really beneficial for like the people working on the West Side Interceptor who otherwise would travel long distances or have to put up someplace. It makes a level of convenience for them. And that's really what we see on the monthly basis mostly.
Seems to work out well.
It does. And it's beneficial to the park system because it brings in revenue.
Do we still have a sheriff and his family living out at Cheetah Lake?
Police officer.
Police? He's a Lebanon policeman?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay, still there?
Mhm.
All right, and he doesn't pay anything?
He mows and cleans restrooms and keeps scofflaws
Got it.
out.
So it's bartering.
It is bartering and,
Okay.
and you can do that in terms of establishing the free living situation as not a taxable benefit because he's working for that and doing certain activities.
Was it always a Lebanon policeman or was it a sheriff before?
So for as long as I've been here, it's been the same person who's a Lebanon police officer.
Okay, yeah. All right, thank you.
Matt, is the support for our Pioneer Cemetery under the parks area?
So there is a specific fund for Pioneer Cemetery.
Small one, if I
It
remember.
is a very small fund and it was established a long time ago based on, I believe, a book being sold.
Well, there's a lot of monuments that need to be repaired.
Okay.
And I'm just wondering what the procedure would be to make that happen.
I guess a request to put some money towards that, either through this body.
Yeah, there is not, I want to say the Pioneer Trust Fund has something like $10,000 in it, which is not enough to do anything. And we don't have any staff trained in monument repair to do that work. So we would need to find a contractor to do it. And that would likely make it then a general fund expense because there simply is no other money to do that work. There's no dedicated resource.
It's in pretty sad shape right now, and I'm disappointed that we can't somehow, some way do some fixing.
If you're going to fix, you really have to fix in the appropriate historic fashion. You have to follow the state historic preservation requirements. And again, we don't have that skill set on staff and would need to get a contractor to do it and need to expend some resources that we just don't have.
I'll do some research.
I think similar to how Build Lebanon Trails does a lot of the kind of forward fundraising for some of those trails that are in town. I mean, there should be hopefully a nonprofit in town that can kind of be the spear for that. And maybe at that time, the city can partner with them. Maybe like the Lebanon Museum Foundation would be a good group.
The
Hint,
Lebanon
hint.
Museum is discussed after they get a building, if they get a building, when they get a building, that they would participate in that down the road once they got secure in a building. But that's a project that would be pretty major, but it would be something the museum would be interested in
Absolutely.
at some
Great.
point.
Nancy and I and Jason have discussed this about a year ago because there was some community folks that were interested in participating in that. We talked about the licenses and the regulations that they had to follow. Plus, we talked about the chemicals and how expensive that particular chemical was. And that was their hesitation because they couldn't afford the chemical. Did that ever happen?
I don't think they ever contacted Jason to arrange for that. I think we had committed that we would buy
Provide the
and
chemical.
store the chemicals because we have that capability with other chemicals we have. But they didn't ever contact
Okay.
Jason to say what those chemicals were, how much we needed,
Okay.
any of that for us to be able to actually take action on it.
Yeah, from what I understand, I was told there was actually it's not a nonprofit, but a group of individuals nationwide that are into doing this as a hobby. And they follow these regulations and had licenses. So maybe if anybody's listening, they can
Well, there-
contact us again.
Right,
Let us
I
know if
believe,
they're interested
I
in that.
believe the State Historic Preservation Office will host trainings on how to do it, because you do have to be able to recognize that's limestone as opposed to marble,
Right.
different cleaners, different cleaning methods, depending on what the headstone is made out of. But I don't know beyond that.
When they told me this was a movement, I said, wow, some people really need hobbies.
It's a good one
It's
for
a
some
good one
people to
for some
have.
people. Right,
You have very
exactly.
quiet neighbors with very little interruption while you're working. I'm sorry.
In last year's notes, it says something about that the only revenue for the Pioneer Cemetery was from interest. That doesn't make any sense to me at the moment. Could you explain that?
Well, so the Pioneer Cemetery Trust just sits there, and the only thing that you can actually use is the interest on the money that's in there.
I see.
And so that's the other piece that makes it very hard to do anything with that money is there was only a small amount put in there. And so you just have a little bit of interest each year that gets added to it that could be spent on actually performing the maintenance.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay.
Yeah, I guess a question around that. Nancy, how do we go about putting together some just basic, I guess, avenues to help restore Pioneer? Who does that? I know there's a group that travels the United States, but maybe Wayne's gonna look into that and see, okay?
Yeah, I don't know I have heard this. I have heard that there are groups that will, either a local group that will adopt a cemetery and take care of it. I have not heard of anything in the Lebanon area to know. I know that we're not the only community that has a pioneer cemetery, a historic cemetery. Ordinarily, a cemetery makes money when they have burials and you pay for that service. Long since closed cemeteries, and my best guess is we got this when there was no one to take care of it. And I think state law requires the lowest level of governmental jurisdiction is required to take ownership and take care of it. So if it had been in the county's the lowest level. Because it's inside the city limits, we are the lowest level of government, and we were required to take ownership of it. But there is no revenue. There are no more burials. No one is paying for anyone who is buried there. So in terms of paying for maintenance, so it just becomes an expense we have. We do mow it. We will go and edge around the outside of the park, but it becomes realistically, with very old cemeteries like this, it's probably better to like hand trim around headstones than weed eat
Yes.
because of potential damage to the stone. And I do know that they become places where vandalism occurs and headstones get knocked over. And sometimes it's just that the headstone, erodes away. And sandstone does not make a good headstone, I guess. So, so that's all what we ended up with, and we basically just do the bare minimum maintenance on it.
I recommend that Jason do this by hand. And with that, why don't we take a 7-minute break?
Okay.
That's kind of sad, that cemetery
Done, because the next part gets confusing.
Please.
Open, close, open, close, open, close. Read this, read that.
Okay.
I think I did that section in 10 minutes last year.
All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started. Matt?
Okay. I've been told maybe I should go a little bit faster, so I'm going to go a little bit faster. If you guys have questions, stop me. Otherwise, I'm going to consider you not having questions. Does that
Okay.
work? Okay. So quickly to go through the state foot and bike path, there's not a lot of changes. Kind of what it normally is. We'll move on to engineering development review. Same thing. There's some increases due to development. Outside of that, it's the same thing as it is. People build, we review.
You're not moving up there.
Oh, well, it's moving on here.
I'm just looking at that footbridge.
Okay, let me go back and reshare it and maybe that'll work.
There you
Oh,
go.
there we go.
Okay.
Okay. So that one is pretty similar to what it's been in previous years. Street funds. We've got a couple overlays that we pull out, signal project. Overall, we get gas tax money that pays for those things, and that amount's gonna be pretty consistent. Maybe now with prices, it might actually go down some, so we'll have to monitor that going forward. That is pretty much that fund. Links Transit, we get a lot of federal money for the Links Transit and state money from the state transit tax. Got some new vehicles that we look to be purchasing. Believe there's some new new routes as well going out to Brownsville. Any questions on any of these?
Any questions? Last year, there was a conversation of boat ramp going in. Did that ever happen?
Of a what?
Was
Boat
there
ramp?
a new boat ramp going
Boat
in?
ramp.
The boat ramp is here and it will be put in as soon as we can get work in the river, right? It got here late last year. It's on the Public Works grounds.
Oh, great, thank you.
That was the next one was the boat ramp. So I think that kind of answers that question. Otherwise, we just get some state funding for some maintenance. Going into police donation funds, we get donations for various projects and then we spend those funds on those projects. Library donation funds, same thing. No peanut gallery laughing over there. Senior center donations, again, same thing. We get things for various projects and we spend them. If there's any questions, again, just holler and I'll stop. Equipment acquisition and replacement, we save for various things that we need to do in the future in this fund. We've tried to kind of limit the amount there unless we know for a specific project that we're going to replace. So that's where we've got some funds sitting out there. This is hopefully to help purchase the
Armory.
building. I'm like, why do I keep forgetting what it is? We've got some funds in here to help with some implementation stuff on Springbrook, IT purchases, and police body cam stuff there. Then we've got some reserves for future purchases of vehicles and various equipment, possible finance software replacement at some point. Here's the Pioneer Cemetery. You'll see the only thing we get in there is interest. There hasn't been any new donations in a lot of years. Street Capital Projects Fund, this is one where currently what we have budgeted has some amounts in reserve. And talking with Ron yesterday, we found out that part of a street that we put money in reserve for is going to be developed in the next year. And so instead of keeping that money in reserve, it probably makes more sense for us to put that money in a spendable category so we can do the other side of the street, which we had received this money for at the same time that the opposite side of the street actually develops. So we'd recommend that the budget committee move $19,200 from the reserve category into the improvement category.
Do we need a motion?
I so move.
Second. Second.
All, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay.
So moved.
So we'll move 19,200 out of here and move it up into the improvement line. Any other questions on street capital projects? Okay, we'll move into the SDCs. Once again, these are all based on development from the community. And as we receive money in, we look and see what projects we're able to do. Storm drainage, that's very useful right now as we've got a lot of projects to do. There's two different kinds. One's reimbursement, one is improvements. So as we have SDC rates, part of that can be used to pretty much replace all of our capital stuff. And then the improvement is to increase capacity in our system. And so we have those kind of broken out so that way we can identify which area we're spending out of. Park improvements and reimbursement for SDCs. Again, a lot of this we have planned to be used for Cheetah Lake and also the property, let's see, to the southeast of Cheetah Lake that we had previously entered into a lease to purchase. That purchase will happen in this next year. Wastewater improvements and reimbursement SDC. Same thing. It's going to be used for West Side Interceptor. And streets. You can see a couple of the projects here that we're looking on. But overall, that is what it is. And I believe this is the last of the funds. Oh, water. Forgot water. So water SDC, same thing. Money's coming in. We're going to use it for water line replacements and things of that sort. Are there any additional questions on those budget areas? Then goes into some of the closed departments and funds that we have that I'm not going to specifically go through at this point, but overall, that's the presentation of the City of Lebanon budget.
What was that?
So overall, that's the presentation of the City of Lebanon budget.
All right, is there any final comments or questions before we move on? Okay. Move on to public hearings. I will open for state shared revenues. Entertain a motion.
Do you want me to give you a kind of idea of what this is about? So the state shared revenue, no?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So each year we get money from the state, and it's called state shared revenue. Part of the budget process and a requirement by the state of Oregon is that we receive comments on what uses that money should be used for. And since I've been here and preceding me, the city has used that money just as general revenue in the general fund, and it's been used to support normal operations. And so that's based on our budget that we've provided. That's what we continue to propose that we use that for.
Entertain a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend the City of Lebanon Budget Committee accept state revenue sharing monies as non-dedicated revenue in the general fund.
I would second that.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Do I have to close this meeting and open the next one?
And normally you also ask for public comment. I don't know that I
Public
see any
comments?
public comment here, but
There are no members of the public here, so I think we're probably covered.
I think so. So we'll close at 2:06 and open the next one. Proposed City of Lebanon budget.
so the proposed budget and the levy of taxes is levying the taxes at our permanent rate for the city, then also levying $1,636,762 towards the general obligation bond. That will help us to pay those obligations in full and run the city as we have budgeted.
Entertain a motion.
I move to recommend the City of Lebanon Budget Committee levy the permanent property tax rate of $5 and 5.1364 per thousand of assessed value for operating purposes and $1,636,762 for payment of bond principal and interest.
I move for approval.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next motion.
And I'm going to ask, so this does say move to recommend the City of Lebanon Budget Committee with the amount, because we've already had two motions to amend for the $5,000 for LDA, the $19,200 for the street capital project. I would ask that you do a move to recommend the City of Lebanon Budget Committee approve the budget as amended.
Uh-huh.
And then we can vote on that and not take additional votes on those amendments.
Okay.
I would move to recommend the City of Lebanon Budget Committee approve the FY 22-23 budget as amended, as proposed by the city's budget officer.
Second.
Second.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so we're going to adjourn as the City of Lebanon Budget Committee and reconvene as the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee. Nancy?
Sure, this one is super easy. We really have nothing new for any of the urban renewal areas. The budget that is proposed for each of the districts is to meet the obligations, pay the debt service that is due in those budgets with balances appropriated in case we wished or needed to do improvements. And with that, I think you can move on into the public hearing.
All right. Open for public hearing. Number 1A.
I move to recommend the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee approve the Northwest Lebanon URD taxes for FY 2022-2023 at the tax increment value of $56,500,000.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And I have to close each one, correct?
Mhm.
All right. Next motion.
I move to recommend the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee approve the Cheetah Lake URD taxes for fiscal year 2022, 2023 at the rate of 100% of the amount from the Division of Tax.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Next motion.
I move to recommend the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee approve the North Gateway URD taxes for fiscal year 2022-2023 at the rate of 100% of the amount from the Division of Tax.
Second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Next motion.
I move to recommend the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee approve the downtown URD taxes for the years 2022, 2023 at the rate of 100% of the amount from Division of Tax.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Next one.
I move to recommend the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee approve the mill race URD taxes for fiscal year 2022, 2023 at the rate of 100% of the amount from the Division of Tax.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. And next one.
I move to recommend the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee adopt the fiscal year 2022, 2023 Lebanon Urban Renewal Agency budget in the sum of $5,478,490 as proposed by the agency's budget officer.
Second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. And I guess we will adjourn as the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee and reconvene as the City of Lebanon Budget Committee. All right. Any comments?
Thank you, staff, for all the hard work you guys did with Nancy and Matt, and you guys just always come through with it, and really appreciate all the hard work. I know it's a pain. It's a hard time of year for some of you. For, at least for me, if I was doing the budget, it would be. Nancy's kind of weird. She kind of likes it, so. But thank you guys, really,
I make
seriously.
them like it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as budgets go, this year, the last couple of years have really been easier than they
Very
have in the
much
past.
easier.
It just makes it a lot easier on us to understand what's going on. And Matt's always been very free with his time to answer any questions ahead of time. Can't thank you enough for that.
Yeah.
Too
I
bad
can
they don't-
recall there was a time when we went 2 and 3 days trying to
Yep.
approve the budget.
Too
And
bad
this
I
is
don't know
really
your name
nice the
anymore.
way we have it now the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I thank you for bringing that up, Mary. The departments that haven't been heard of, is there anything you'd like to say? Anything you'd want to bring up?
No,
Yes,
they
sir.
don't. They don't. They
Oh,
wanna go
that's just a
work.
wave. There was a couple of questions that I had, and I think most of them have been answered. The Fifth Street and Tangent work that has to be done, how are we doing with that? I happen to know somebody who lives right on the corner, so I'm just asking.
I wonder who.
We've been working through, looking at the urban renewal, what's been spent to date. Found a couple of errors we've been correcting, and then we'll be working on getting the list of projects remaining and do an assessment. Some of the projects remaining in that urban renewal district, we may want to take off the list. May not be suitable, and I think we'll probably be meeting next week to run through the numbers internally with Matt before he's gone, and hope to be able to put together some discussions for council later this summer.
Bombard him with as much work as possible before he leaves. Yeah.
Well, he has said that we can call him and ask him questions, but I think he was quoting an hourly rate for his time.
How are we doing with the advertising campaign to go to e-billing?
How are we doing with the advertising?
Yeah, we talked about doing some marketing to move us to e-billing completely.
I know we've done some advertising. I don't know if in the past, I need to put a new note. I think for us to really have a lot of success with it, we're going to have to not just put an advertisement on the part of the bill that we always change what it says, because I'm going to be honest, I don't think a lot of people look at their bills. That's what we frequently hear from people when they go, well, I didn't read that. It's like, well, that's why you don't know about it. But maybe having an insert in the bill that will be somewhat separate might bring more attention to that. We also need to work with Springbrook to see, they've offered some help in that advertising aspect of trying to get more people to adopt to do online and automatic pay. So, but it has not happened at this point.
Oh, I'll also say, we have a fairly large segment of the community that does not have computers at home, doesn't have email. I think that became very apparent during the pandemic and the amount of work that the senior center was doing to help people get signed up for vaccinations when you had to do that online. And they were using, the city's email to help people get vaccines, vaccination appointments, confirmations, phone calls, then here's the time and where you're supposed to be. Just because of a pretty sizable share of the population not having that access. They don't have smartphones or anything else. So that's a challenge in terms of getting people to e-bill when they don't have e.
All right.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments before we adjourn? Doesn't look like we need to be here tomorrow, except for you, KJ. You'll be here tomorrow.
Hey, my office is across the street, so, I'm easy.
I think the chairman should show up tomorrow.
We'll be here.
Someone has to gavel it in.
All right, then. Adjourn.